Today on Biblical Higher Ed Talk, I sit down with Patti Harris, president of Kuyper College, a work college, a unique subset of colleges and universities recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm your host, Philip Dearborn, and we are honored to have with us this week as our guest, Patti Harris. Patti is the president of Kuyper College, and I've invited her to talk today about work colleges. Now, one of the things I really love about ABHE institutions is the broad scope of how our different institutions carry out their missions. And Patti has been at Kuyper for a number of years and overseen the process of Kuyper becoming classified as a work college. And it's a designation that's recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. So I've invited her in to kind of talk to us about that today. What is it? How does it work? But also to pick her brain a little bit when it comes to her leadership, the DNA, the culture of Kuyper College. And then we'll close out our time with her just kind of reflecting back and giving some words of advice for the emerging leaders that listen to our podcast. So Patti, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Philip. Thank you for this opportunity to be on the ABHE podcast and to introduce listeners to a work college, a federally recognized work college movement, and more specifically to Kuyper College.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As you know, as our listeners know, we always like to open up with a question that kind of gives the audience a chance to get to know you a little bit. So tell us about a defining moment in your life that God used to propel you forward in your personal or your professional life.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it does make you ponder a bit. The story I want to share is one that I often share with students who ask me, how, when, where do I sense God's leading? I share with them that over the years, my husband and I have had an experience, kind of a pattern of sorts of how we see God leading us. And our experiences have been that God uses conversations we have with other people to discern his leading. And one such conversation is what came to mind as you shared this question with me. I remember when I was in about first grade in Sunday school, I heard some missionaries come and visit our church. And ever since then, I always was interested in serving abroad as a teacher missionary. And it took about 30 years to get there. In the 1990s, when our family was living in the LA area, my husband was serving as a pastor of a church. I was doing some doctoral studies and biblical studies, and then also teaching at a Christian middle school. And we were at that point in life where we were discerning kind of our professional, personal place. Where were we going to go? We felt like our work had finished somewhat in Southern California. We'd been there for about 6 years. And I didn't sign my contract for the next teaching year. So the superintendent of the school called me in to have a conversation and just said, Patti, why didn't you sign this? What are you thinking about? If you could do anything else besides teach here, what would you do? And it didn't take me very long, a moment to answer his question. And I said, well, I'd go abroad and teach. And as we were driving home that day, got home, made supper in the evening, I sat down with my husband and said, I got to tell you a conversation I had today. And I told him about this, and he looked at me stunned. He said, I was preparing my sermon today, and I was watching a video about missionaries in Asia and what God was doing through them, and my heart just stirred. Literally, within months, we accepted a position with our denomination, and he as a leadership developer and me teaching at Asian Theological Seminary. And we and our 3 children then moved to Manila, Philippines and spent 15 years there. It really was always God at work, but it was those conversations we had with others to kind of show how God leads.
Yeah.
And that actually also gave me the opportunity to be in higher education and become not only a faculty member, but then an administrator as well. So
yeah.
Significant story in your lives.
Yeah, it is. And the piece I love about it is it confirms the sovereignty of God. And here you
Absolutely.
are processing through something, and then your husband is as well, almost separate from your processing. But then, wow, what an opportunity to pull it all together. I love that we serve a sovereign God, because I think left up to our own devices, we would have probably messed up a lot. but God is there and blesses each one of those steps. So let's jump into some of this conversation here, just so our listeners can get to know Kuyper College just a little bit. You've led now as president for a number of years, and Kuyper College is named after a theologian and politician, which I didn't realize, Abraham Kuyper. But talk to us about Kuyper's theology and how that shapes the ethos of the campus.
Just as background, we changed our name to Kuyper College in 2006. So prior to that, before we were accredited, we're Reformed Bible Institute and then Reformed Bible College. And in 2006, for a variety of reasons, changed our name to Kuyper College. As you noted, Philip, Abraham Kuyper lived from 1837 till the early 20th century in the Netherlands. He was a pastor and a theologian. He was the founder of the Free University of Amsterdam, which was the first Protestant college university in the Netherlands based on a Reformed worldview. Political leader, prime minister, and then theologically, he is really, and we were just talking about this, really best known for this whole idea of sphere sovereignty, that every part of human life exists equally and directly before the face of God. Sphere sovereignty implies that no one area of life or societal community is sovereign over another, that each sphere has been created with its own integrity and purpose. And so God-given norms for education are there for education as well as political life or family life, and they should all be recognized. So his most famous quote, in fact, it's carved in one of the lamps in our chapel, is that there is not a square inch in the whole domain of human existence over which Christ, who is sovereign over all, does not cry, mine.
So that's it at a high level. Then how does that impact on a daily basis, kind of the ethos of Kuyper, the student experience?
Sure. Well, it's interesting because you would think it would be something that Kuyperian worldview would be more evident in a liberal arts college, because there's a sense where every area of learning, every area of work, every area of service belongs to God. And so you see that in a lot of our, let's call them our sister Reformed institutions. So at Kuyper, being a Bible college, it's a little bit more defined. But we help our students understand that everything they do gives honor and glory to God and integrity to them as part of a community. This does play into the work college experience, into the service, into the learning. Our institutional values show this. We have an institutional value of the primacy of Scripture and the Reformed faith tradition, that integration of faith and learning, that the sacred and the secular are integrated. They are not separate from each other. Those would all in a way be blended into a Kuyperian worldview. As well, the whole idea of holistic development of our students. You aren't here just to learn, but you're here to holistically be developed and then to integrate into whatever area of work. So for example, in our work college experience, we have students that will probably go into full-time Christian ministry within a church, and their work placement might be in facilities. And that shouldn't be a surprise to them because they are learning the dignity and integrity of work and who they are as created in God's image. And the work they do there as much as what they will carry out when they go on into their work at church. So that whole reformed worldview of how we look at work and life and service. And
you started talking about work college, and that I think you definitely see how that ideology, that theology, that philosophy feeds into the fact that you all have chosen to be a work college. So as we talked about at the top of the show, work college is a classification of school recognized by the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education. So talk to us about it. What is a work college? How does it differ from traditional approaches to student workers?
Sure, because I would think if, with other listeners that are other Bible colleges or other types of colleges, we all know about the Federal Work Study Program. And work colleges are a subset of that. So there's some connection there, but there is also some distinctions. If you can permit me, I'm going to read the definition that's from the DOE because it explains it, and then I'll just kind of source that out. Okay. So it says I'm going to read it here. The purpose of the work college program is to recognize, encourage, and promote the use of comprehensive work, learning, service programs as a valuable educational approach when it's an integral part of the institution's educational program and a part of a financial plan that decreases reliance on grants and loans to encourage students to participate in community service activities. So in short, it's a very intentional program of the integration of learning, work, and service. Years ago, we always employed student workers here. That's what they were called. They're now called student staff because we needed them to do different jobs. And that's great. And some of that could be supported by the small resources we are provided through the Department of Ed with federal work study money. We wanted to do something far more intentional about that. So how did we step into making our learning purposeful and our work purposeful and our service purposeful and integrate all of those things? And that's just a whole different approach. It's like a paradigm shift of how we're looking at our students and at the work they do.
Yeah, and I've had the chance to be on your campus and visit with your faculty and with some of the students and just kind of hear some of the stories. It is fundamentally different. I would say that the work study is really divorced. The traditional work study approach is really divorced from the academic curriculum approach, even the philosophy of education. It's simply students who are just getting a job on campus as opposed to getting a job in the community. But in a work college, you're intentionally connecting in the academic experience, kind of a holistic, which fits Kuyper's approach to things, that the whole experience is, we don't live separately. Even after we graduate from college, it's not like I live my work life separate from my home life, separate from my church life. It's all this integrated experience. Particularly, I think when it comes to, our mandates that we look at in scripture, of a creation mandate, of the Great Commission to go and make disciples, that's kind of all intertwined into our human experience. And as Christ followers, what we're expected to do in culture and society. So what you're trying to do is, because work is such a big part of what we experience in life, work is part of what it means to be created in the image of God in perfection. In Genesis, we were created to work. One of the things that we were tasked to do was work, and that was imperfection. Work didn't come after the fall, it came before the fall. So it's really incorporating all of those pieces together into one holistic experience.
Yeah, that's very true. And we looked a lot at that throughout scripture, we witness God is at work. God created the world, created human beings in his image, and then, like you said, tasked us to work. God the Father demonstrates his dominion, his governance over creation. The Gospels talk about how Jesus Christ assumed various vocations as laborer, teacher, leader, and Philip, the Holy Spirit's at work in powerful ways. And so we as Christians are called to model faithful work in our lives and to respect the integrity and the dignity of all work. And I think that's what we want our students to experience here. So if I can just take a minute to kind of define these three areas a little bit in that. Yeah. So we talk a lot about purposeful learning, purposeful work, purposeful service. We are, by the way, part of the Work College Consortium. It's a consortium of 9 work colleges, and that's kind of more than their tagline, that's their mission for what we are to do. But for example, purposeful learning, as you pointed out, our faculty and our student development staff, overseen by our Dean of Students in Work, we have mapped the Kuyper Works, that's our work program here on campus, that's what it's called. We've mapped our Kuyper Works learning objectives. Okay, they're not just work objectives, they're learning objectives, with our student learning objectives that are used in the classroom. So we have a big grid, and all of our faculty met a couple of years ago at a retreat, and we mapped how even our classroom learning is going to be tied to these learning objectives. So there's intentional integration. It's not just a program we have on campus that students work at. It's learning through work. As well, our staff supervisors, the ones that supervise our student staff, some of them had to have a paradigm shift. They used to have student workers go shelve these books, go clean the gym, whatever it is. Now it's, how do I help you learn through work? And that's that next part of purposeful work. So we built 5 competencies, and our student staff are evaluated on these competencies each semester. And those evaluations are compiled into a work transcript. So when they graduate, they not only have an academic transcript, they have a work transcript. And the 5 competencies are really leading students towards the development of valued, let me say, like soft skills that aren't specific to any given area of where they're working on campus. Collaboration, critical thinking, effort and productivity. That's become a big one lately. Professionalism. And then our 5th one is a theology of work. We want our students to understand, how do they develop a theology of work in the classroom and out of the classroom? And then the 3rd area is the purposeful service. And this is, how are they, apart from their work placement and Kuyper Works and their classroom learning, how are they learning to serve? And incidentally, right now, or maybe it was last week, our Dean of Students and Work, along with, I think it was 4 of our students, went to Kuyper College, another work college, one of the flagship work colleges, with work college students from the other 8 schools. And they were doing a service project together for 4 days. So just an intentional way to serve. So you can see it's far more than we employ students on campus.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. You're familiar with competency-based theological education or competency-based education. There are definitely elements of that here, because it's one of the things that competency-based education tries to do is have metrics that you can evaluate some of the more difficult qualitative aspects of our life that it's hard to evaluate. Like, how do you measure integrity? Because it's hard to measure doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't do it. And I think the way you described it is some of the softer skills. And, that's that emotional intelligence. That's the capacity and ability to, understand that what you're doing, you may be shelving books, but do you see the bigger picture and the opportunities that come alongside in that work environment? If there's any sort of a makeup that industry, business, ministry, social work, education, what they're looking for are people who have that capacity. Not just, do you know how to do it, but do you understand fully more about it? And are you a well-rounded person when you graduate?
Exactly. Yeah. All of our programs have required internships, but this goes far beyond that. In fact,
it does.
When we started looking at what it means to be a work college, I and some others interviewed a lot of employers in all those different areas, like you mentioned, and said, okay, you hire college students. What are they lacking? And really, it was soft skills. It was some of these areas. And so this year, as we press in more and more to become the type of excellent work college environment we want to become, we not only have professional development gatherings, meetings for our professional staff that supervise the students, but this year on Wednesday mornings, our first level, our level 1 or entry level students, all have a required professional development hour. They get paid for it. But we bring in a variety of speakers that speak on these topics. And so they start to understand more than just the supervisor they're working with, what it means to have these areas in their life and develop that type of work.
Yeah. So I'm sure you see a lot of value in this approach. If you had to rank them, what would you say are the top 3 values of a work college?
Yeah, a lot of it's what we've talked about already. I think it's the intentional integration of taking the learning in the classroom and connecting it with learning outside of the classroom, beyond an internship that's in their area, but providing them a work environment. And ours is currently on-campus work environment that allows them to practice the skills and the learning that they had in the classroom into their work experience and vice versa. And we hear testimonies of that with our students of how that's working. And that is that holistic approach. I think that's number 1. Number 2, what I just mentioned, it's developing skills and competencies that they will need to carry out in their adult life, whatever vocation, job, career they go into, and that employers are saying are highly needed. And how do they do that under the supervision of people that support our mission and vision and have a lot of intentionality to help these students understand that more than an outside employer. And then 3rd, it provides also, work college provides affordability so that students can financially be supported in their college environment. So our students, depending on the type of hours and the wages they make, anywhere from $4,000 to $12,000 goes towards their tuition. And this year we implemented a small stipend where most of it's applied directly to their tuition. These are some federal requirements of the program, but you can provide your students with a certain in-hand stipend, a cash stipend that they can have as well. So affordability is probably the third one.
Which is huge. I mean,
It
that's
is.
with cost of higher education going where it is. It really is bucking the trend of providing another way, an alternative way to keep college costs down so the students aren't graduating with incredible amounts of debt. So I'm sure it's not all rosy. What are some of the challenges you face in having this particular approach to the college?
It's a big endeavor. It's not for the faint-hearted institution. I think the biggest thing is continuing to build the institutional culture of being a work college, not just implementing a work program. A couple of examples. In the last 2 years, we refreshed our mission statement to express our value of being a work college. And then in our new strategic plan, we have 3 themes. And one of the 3 themes is deliberately looking at how we integrate learning, work, and service. So, for example, how are we building the infrastructure, the policies, the positions, the payroll, the budget? It's a lot of back-end kind of work. It takes everybody and everybody's commitment. How are we providing, I mentioned the professional development of the staff and student staff. How do we communicate the story? How do we share this story with prospective students and their families and the broader community when they say, I hear your work college. What does that mean? What's your elevator speech about on that?
Right.
And then how do we deepen this experience on campus? We're looking to do more for the service part of it. And what does that mean? And then thankfully, as our enrollment has increased the last couple of years, our main endeavor when we started this was to partner with off-campus work placements. And so we're looking to do that in the next couple of years. And to help those businesses, social work agencies, churches realize you're not just getting an employee here. You also have to step up and you have to help these students learn through work. It's kind of the big picture. And I think on the ground level, Philip, probably the biggest thing is helping our students navigate a schedule where you're a student learner in the classroom. And what does that mean? You're a student staff in your Kuyper Works position. And then many of them are student athletes. So helping them navigate a healthy life balance so that they can do all of this and appreciate, I don't just have hours I have to put in for Kuyper Works, but in the end, hoping that they will realize the benefit of all of this.
Yeah. It's an all-consuming approach. And there's a saying that, vision leaks. And you have a very clear vision for what you want to become. And you're constantly having to fill that bucket and reminding people, and it's procedures, it's policies, it's curriculum. It's when you're hiring faculty, when you're hiring staff, they have to have this mindset. And it's not explaining what a work college is from an elevator speech perspective. You need several floors to be able to fully explain what it is. It's not something that is part of people's regular vocabulary because there's so few of them. So it's kind of like, now, what are you talking about? Are you talking about like student worker stuff? It's broader than that. So I could see where that's definitely a challenge to keep that message over and over and over about what you are and what you do so that it doesn't diminish or go away. But kudos to you for making it a priority and actually building it into your strategic plan.
Yeah, no, thank you. And we're not there yet. It's one thing to develop a work program. It's another thing to say, what does it mean to be a work college? And like you pointed out, there are 10 of us. We're all very different. I think there's one other ABHE member that's not a part of the Work College Consortium, Ecclesia College. There's some that have come and gone because they just realize they cannot do it all. It's not a resource builder for an institution. It's a resource provider. And so that was the first thing when we worked with the leaders of the Work College Consortium. They're like, don't think you're going to do this to better support your college financially. We work with the Department of Education and with the Appropriations Committee of Congress. And as they divvy up the work study, the federal work study amount, a piece of it goes towards work colleges. And given our student enrollment, et cetera, we get a slice of that. That's been going on for 20, 30 years now, and we very much appreciate that. But that's minimal to what it takes for us to run our work program. And as you know, budgets in Congress are hard to nail down, and the federal work study in the House right now is looking to have a big cut. We'll see what happens in the Senate, but those are always some concerns as well. We have to be steadfast in our dedication to be a work college and realize we cannot rely on outside resources to keep this going.
Yeah, so many are looking for the magic bullet that's going to provide all of the resources a college needs, and that just doesn't exist. And if you're wanting to go into this for financial reasons, that's the wrong reason to do it. It's the bigger picture of what you're trying to accomplish. So you mentioned that there are other institutions like this. So just take a minute to explain where do you see this going? What's the future? What are the conversations like with the other 10 that you're part of as to the future of work colleges?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, there's no one cookie cutter type of work college. But generally speaking, we are smaller. We're all private colleges with a real intentionality about our mission and our values and the students that we serve. I think probably the biggest challenge would be asking colleges and the leadership, does this work college model fit your mission and your vision and your values? Do you have an existing culture at your institution that embodies work and service? You're not looking for resources, but you're looking really to help your students develop holistically. And then what's the intent, the goals of having a student work program? Can you afford this? Not just in resources, but can you afford it working with all of your employees, staff, faculty, administrators? Because it takes all of us and a lot of learning. Work colleges are very good at working together, like this service project that we have. There's a president's council I serve on. So it's a good consensus and community that we work within. But again, it's very intentional. So if colleges are saying, oh, that just sounds like something we should do, take a good look at it. It does demand a lot of intentionality, a lot of buy-in from the whole organization of your college, from board all the way to students. But we are thankful for it. We have 81% of our students are enrolled this year in our Kuyper Works program. The federal requirements require that 100% of your residential students are engaged. So you can think right away, yeah, if you're a college of 3,000 and you have 1,500 students on campus, that's going to be pretty difficult to do. But 100% of our residential students, up to at least 50% of your student body has to be engaged in the work program. And we have a lot of commuter students that are also engaged in it.
Yeah. Well, Patti, this has been excellent conversation. I really do appreciate you, your leadership, what you're doing. We have 1 minute left. So in this last minute, you have been involved in leadership a good part of your life in a missionary context, in a theological seminary context, in a college context. A lot of our leaders are younger. What's a word of advice that you want to leave to those who are listeners as they're climbing their leadership journeys?
Well, probably based on our conversation here, I would encourage young leaders and more experienced leaders to take some time to think and read about what it means to have a theology of work. You may sense where God is calling you, and that's wonderful, but we see that goes in so many different directions. God is a God who works, and what does that mean in your own area? And if I just make a plug for one book, when we started working as a work college, we took Timothy Keller's book. Here, I'll show it to you. Every Good Endeavor. And we all read that as a community. And I guess that's what I would leave with your listeners is if you're really serious about how you do faithful work as a Christian, give some thought to what does it mean to have a theology of work within your life and within the community in which you're a part of.
Great. Well, thank you very much for that, Patti. And I appreciate you joining us for our show today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate everything that ABHU is doing. Thanks for your time.
Absolutely. And if you want to learn more about Kuyper College, in the show description, we'll put a link to the website. And since you mentioned that book, we'll also put a link to Amazon in case you're interested in getting that book by Tim Keller. A special shout out to Moody Bible Institute. Thank you to them and their sponsorship of this episode. And if you want to learn more about Moody, definitely check them out on the website. All that information is in our show description. So until next time, stay kingdom focused.